Hello, lovely people. Today I'm going to be talking about a book called Reckless by Cornelia Funke. So if you don't know, I'm currently doing something called a rereading challenge, where in a previous video of mine I listed around 14 books that I considered to be my favorite books, maybe back in 2017. And I thought it would be fun to set myself the challenge of rereading all of these books now, almost a decade later, and seeing if I still feel the same, if I still consider them to be my favorite books. This is the third book that I've reread from this challenge, and I was excited for this one. So excited that I went and bought my own copy of this rather than, renting it from the library or finding an ebook or an audiobook of it, because I knew that I wanted to own this book. Now, having gone and reread it, I don't regret buying it. I don't think I'm going to go buy the next two books, even though I've never read the next two books. I don't think they were out when I first read this. Actually, let me double check. Let me check myself. Okay, so originally published in 2010. No, they would have been out when I read this book. Oops, I did not do my research back then and to see if there was another book. Interestingly enough, this trilogy has been revised and republished by the author Cornelia Funke, I believe back in 2016, so she did a revamp. So now, when you look for it, it might be called The Petrified Flesh instead. The author's reasoning behind revising this book is really interesting. She essentially said that she didn't feel like she had explored the world and the characters deeply enough, and that she felt her readers' reactions to the book confirmed that to her. So she kind of expanded a lot on the lore and the character building. I do not remember this book being significantly different, this revised version, from the original version I read. However, I don't remember a lot about the book to begin with, so I'm probably not the most reliable source here. So what this book is about is our main character, Jacob Reckless, who at the beginning of the book is 12 years old. He has a much younger brother named Will, and he's currently looking after his unwell mother. He discovers this mirror in his house, which essentially is a portal to Mirror World, this world full of fairy tale, folklore, creatures, and very quickly within the first few chapters there's a time skip of 12 years later where his younger brother Will has grown up and followed him into Mirror World. He is cursed and starts turning into stone and becoming what this book calls a goyle. Jacob must quickly find a way to help his brother solve this curse before he turns full goyle and is irreversible. The main thing that I'd say is that the pacing of this book is strange. You're opening up with who you assume will be the main character, right? It's a 12-year-old Jacob Reckless, and you start reading and you're thinking, right, the majority of the story is going to follow our 12-year-old Jacob Reckless as he first discovers the mirror world and all of the enchanted beings behind it. That is not the case at all. We quickly time skip 12 years later. Jacob Reckless has spent an entire 12 years navigating and living within the mirror world, and we are none the wiser about what happens in the mirror world, what this means, what creatures are in here, how he survived. The main crux of the very beginning of the story is that there's a 12-year time skip, and this is really refreshing, but also it takes a while for you to orient yourself as a reader. Even after Cornelia Funke's revision, I do feel like she probably could have spent more time establishing this to the reader so that they feel kind of a bit more on their feet before we are just launched into the story. The Goyle are essentially a humanoid race with stone skin, and there are different types of stone to indicate kind of the rarity and your position in this world. In this revision, I do certainly feel like Cornelia Funke went deeper into the kind of the politics and the world building of this. The book has a map. But yeah, as a first-time reader, if you don't know what to expect, it can be quite daunting and very fast-paced, and you're kind of thinking, I wish you'd spend more time just establishing what's going on, who these characters are, but we're launched straight into the action. There is still some beautiful language, and Cornelia Funke has built this amazing world, this well-crafted, really deep world based on a lot of different Germanic folklore and fairy tales, very familiar races of mythical creatures. Despite these all being creatures that we will recognize, it still feels fresh. It doesn't feel too overdone or like we've read this all before. However, I can't help but feel that things are just so quickly cast aside by Funke, and it's really frustrating as a reader. One thing to keep in mind is that this is a children's book. So I wonder if the pacing and the very short chapter lengths is contributing to this. Like, I really just wanted a deeper narrative, more world building, more time spent on this book rather than rushing through the main events. The thing about this being a children's book as well is there are some genuinely creepy moments. I remember being creeped out by the very specific character called the Tailor, who is essentially this creepy guy who follows people in the woods with scissors and will like murder you. How he's introduced is that you kind of hear this snipping sound in the deep dark forest. Oh my god, like that is scary. And that's definitely like one of the moments I remember most from this book. Another key character in this book is Fox, who is Jacob's kind of sidekick, traveler companion. Like, he finds this fox early on into his travels in the mirror world that we're not really privy to. It's the time period in the 12-year time skip that we don't know too much about. I believe her character is essentially cursed that she can transform into an actual wolf, so she spends most of her time as a wolf and feels very uncomfortable changing into her human form, admitting that she has to be vulnerable, have human feelings. It's easier to be animalistic. There's a lot of that theme as well in Will's character, who is increasingly becoming Goyle, who are known essentially to be kind of the main antagonists of Mirror World, of this universe. They're often seen as cold and calculating and wanting to essentially colonize the entirety of Mirror World. So there's definitely like an overarching theme of fighting your humanity, losing your humanity, feeling more comfortable, more safe in an animalistic or cold stone version of yourself. Something that is also brought up is the fact that Jacob, to go to the mirror world, abandoned Will. Will is a very interesting character who, again, you don't really get that many perspectives from. Something about Will is that he becomes part of like this wider legend that the Goyle hear, essentially that the Goyle with Jade's skin will ultimately protect their king and ensure that their survival as a race. Jade Goyles are not something that you see in this universe, so Will is coveted. So this book isn't from a fixed perspective. We often switch between a lot of different characters. Mostly Jacob, I'd say the main character, but you get some from Clara, who is Will's human girlfriend, who finds out and ends up traveling to the mirror world once and becomes also a companion of the main story in the mirror world. We get some perspectives of the Goyle themselves and the generals who are trying to find Will, some from Fox, which are interesting. I think these are some of the chapters that Cornelia Funke revised and added in the later edition. But the thing is, these chapters, I think the longest chapter in this book is maybe around 8 to 9 pages long. They are incredibly short chapters, and when you're switching between perspectives, this is what I mean, that I would love to have some more kind of dedicated time spent on specific characters or themes. It just felt like we were jumping around everywhere, and I think Cornelia Funke probably limited herself by making this a children's book. There is such a great like epic fantasy adult fiction book hidden in this story, in my opinion. Reading it now, however, it does fall short and it makes me sad. Without going too far into spoilers, there is also an incredibly convenient ending resolution to one of the plot points of this story, which many people have pointed out in their own reviews. It doesn't really make much sense, other than to kind of set up the second book of the trilogy. If you're into fairy tales, dark fairy tales and all of that, and you're not against reading a children's book, I would recommend Reckless. I think it's a really interesting concept. I have no clue how the second and third books go, how this story overall ends up being resolved. So I gave this book 3.5 stars out of 5. That is my final rating. I don't think I will ever go and read the second and third books. I think I'm happy with leaving this as it is. I don't want to know. It was fun, just a little disappointing as an adult. I was kind of expecting it for this one because of how children's book oriented it was. Actually, never say never. Maybe I will go and read the second and third books at some point in my life. I just feel like the older I get, the less I'm gonna want to be reading a children's book. I don't know. We'll see. So that concludes Reckless by Cornelia Funke for my rereading challenge. An interesting one that I'm a little disappointed by. Let me know if you've read this book. I feel like not too many people have. I feel like more people have read her Inkheart trilogy, which was obviously the more popular one, which I also loved. I'll see you in the next video whenever I make it. Bye bye.